While they get the wires sorted out, we'll listen to a bit of Leadbelly, a giant of American blues whose final sessions were released by Folkways in 1953.
John, come on, I never do you know. Well, I know about a Avon and a dress she wore, umbrella on her shoulder. I beat the baby in her hand. Well, I'm going as a captain. Be trying to lose my man, let the midnight special shine a light on me. Let the midnight special shine a heaven loving light on me when you get up in the morning.
That was Leadbelly with Midnight Special, and I'm talking now to Pete Seeger in New York. Pete, it's good to talk to you.
Well, Mike, I'm not really used to modern technology, but here we are. I'm sitting in Beacon, New York, 60 miles north of the big city. And I'm in Manchester, England, and we'll bundle along somehow, I'm sure. Pete, what did you think of the book? Oh, it's a fine book. It gives the details about the life of this really extraordinary man who was the son of a famous novelist. His father said, Moe, we have to get a message from Dr. Einstein to put on the air, urging American Jews to give more help to their relatives to get out of Germany.
That, of course, was Albert Einstein, wasn't it?
Albert.
Yeah.
So they went down to Princeton, recorded a short statement from Dr. Einstein, which could be played on the radio. And over supper, Dr. Einstein says, well, young Mr. Asch, what do you do? And Moe said, oh, I install public address systems right now, but I have this recording machine, and I've met this extraordinary musician called Leadbelly, and nobody's recording him because they say it's not commercial. But I think this is important. If this music is forgotten, it would be a tragedy for the world. And Einstein says, you're absolutely right. The American people don't appreciate their own culture. It'll be a Polish Jew like you who will do the job. And that's what he did.
The book, I've got to confess, I found it a little bit dry and academic, but what did come across to me was the great contribution of the Jews to American culture, particularly in that period of America. The artistic contribution is amazing.
My guess is when history is written correctly, we'll find that all sorts of minority peoples have contributed things to the majority culture which they weren't recognized for.
What I did feel about the book on a personal level reading it, and never having met Moe Asch, I didn't feel that I got to know the character of the man. What was he like as a guy?
Oh, he had a sense of humor, but he also could get very angry. I remember going into his little tiny office, hearing him shouting on the phone, I said you'll get your money next week. Do you want to drive me out of business?
He was scared of hit records, wasn't he? He didn't like hit records.
There's a real danger in getting involved in the pop scene where you sell, or you're out of business. He put out records even if they didn't sell. You know, some professor would come back from a faraway place. He says, Mr. Asch, my students keep wanting copies of these tapes I recorded in northern Pakistan or wherever. Would you be willing to put out a record? Moe says, well, I'd be glad to release it. The only thing is you must understand the terms. I will give you $100, and that will be all the money you will ever get. In addition to giving me the tapes, ready for me to put them on the master in the correct order, at the correct volume, you must give me 5 or 10 pages of explanation about what the music is about, because I always put a complete brochure with every one of my LPs. And the only thing I can promise you is your record will never go out of print as long as I'm alive, and I hope after I'm gone, why, the records will still be available.
And he actually did this, didn't he? Because, of course, the Smithsonian Folkways recordings have been reissued quite recently, a 6-CD edition. And if we can just break for a little bit of music now, I'd like to play something from that, which had a tremendous importance in my life, because I actually first started playing in jug bands. Would you believe we had jug bands in England? We were based upon the American jug bands, and this is Gus Cannon with Minglewood Blues.
If you're coming back, leave it not beyond.
Pete, the influence of Folkways Records and the Smithsonian recordings and stuff must have been immense in its time.
In certain circles, it was the record company. I not only made one record after another for it for about 10 years. I think every 3 or 4 months I had to do LP out. My brother said, Pete, I can't listen to all your records. They come out so quick. He made children's records and records on this and that subject. He said, nobody else has got a record out on it. Do you want to do it? We made records of industrial ballads out of the 19th century.
In a way, these became the canon, if you like, of American folk music, or at least the old tradition. Although I know there were young folk singers coming along, but he certainly conserved and encapsulated, if you like, all the great wealth that was there in American folk music.
I would say for a good many people, their first taste of old-time American music was listening to that anthology which Harry Smith put together. Harry was a little short guy who just collected records, not knowing why he collected them, except he thought they were fascinating. And when Moe Asch met him, he not only released one LP, but another, and then another, and another. These were so-called commercial hillbilly records and blues records and gospel records of the 1920s, which now were completely unavailable.
He was an amazing person too in that his politics, I don't know whether he ever was a CP member, but he certainly was a great man with the civil rights movement, wasn't he? He was tremendously behind that and stood for everything that the civil rights stood for.
Moe was a very independent man. I don't think he joined any political outfit, and he found himself able to work with people even though he knew he disagreed with them strongly. There was a truly great Kentucky singer who was almost violently anti-Semitic. When he was leaving New York, he said to somebody I knew, "Thank God I'm leaving this Jew town."
Wow.
But Moe knew he was a very talented musician, and he recorded him. But Moe was raised by his aunt. His father and mother were always off traveling, and Moe and his brothers and sisters were raised by his aunt, who was a close friend of Lenin, and ended their life in the Soviet Union.
Wow.
Moe came here around World War I as a child, learned English, went to college, and became interested in electronics. And that's how he got into recording. But then he got into anthropology. He worked with the anthropologist Harold Kurlander, you know, putting out one recording after another. Well, it's a fascinating thing. Not just American music, but music of the entire world got in. And you realize this job was not done by any museum, not even Musée de l'Homme in Paris.
It was just an individual, wasn't it?
Not done by any library, not done by any university, not by Oxford, not by Harvard. It was one small, harassed businessman in New York who said, this job's got to be done, and I guess I'm going to do it.
And he went out and did it. Well, let's play another track from the Smithsonian Folkways recording. It's called Ain't Gonna Let Nobody Turn Me Round.
Aha, this is one of the most famous songs of the civil rights movement, which most people date from 1955, when Martin Luther King led a boycott of the city buses in Montgomery, Alabama, and won. I guess for many people, it faded away when he was assassinated in 1968. But this song is still sung. Every Martin Luther King Day, I go down to my local Baptist church, and we sing this song and other songs like it.
Ain't gonna let nobody, Lordy, turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody, Lordy, turn me round. Keep on walking, yeah, keep on talking, Lordy, marching up to freedom land. Ain't gonna let segregation, Lordy, turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let segregation, Lordy, turn me round. Keep on walking, yeah, keep on talking, yeah, marching up to freedom land. Ain't gonna let no jailhouse, Lordy, turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let no jailhouse turn me round. Keep on walking, Lord, keep on talking, Lord, marching up to freedom land.
Pete, Moe Asch obviously wasn't just a businessman. He had a great belief in the music, great belief in people as well. But he did have a strange attitude towards copyright. If I could just... I found something here in the book which fascinated me. There was a manager of, I think it was Lonnie Donegan's, inquiring about royalties due to his client for songs recorded by a certain Leadbelly, including Rock Island Line. Asch found the suggestion preposterous. It says in the book here, "I'll tell you what," he suggested to the unsuspecting hustler, "you come back here this afternoon, I'll have all the records here, and I'll break them over your head one at a time." What was his attitude towards copyright? He believed that people's songs were people's songs, didn't he? No matter where they came from.
Yes, Moses Asch would record songs of the city or the country or any country in the world, and he believed that they were the precious possession of the future inhabitants of the world. Mm-hmm. And it's true, somebody could make some money out of printing copies of them and selling them, and some could make money playing them on the radio, and some could make money recording them. But in the long run, he says, these are the precious possessions of all the people. Some of the old Folkways records literally don't sell more than about 5 copies a year. According to the contract with Moe Asch, they stay in print. When the 5 get sold, he makes 5 more copies and Xeroxes 5 more copies of the brochure to go with it.
But it's still a living treasury of the American folk history, if you like.
British and all sorts of places, too.
Of course, yes, because it was a worldwide thing. He did accept almost everything. The jackdaw, collecting all kinds of things together.
Thank God for the miniaturization of technology. Bulky 78 RPM discs don't need to be saved anymore. Getting scratchier every time you play it. We've got tiny digital things. Of course, you know what's going to happen. Some huge asteroid, very magnetic, will veer close to the Earth and wipe out everything that's on magnetic tape, and we'll go right back to the Stone Age.
And we'll all have to take out our banjos and start singing and playing for each other then, won't we? Pete, it's been great to talk to you. I'd like to finish with a piece of your music, a recording you made for Folkways, called Darling Corrie. Can you tell us a little bit about it just before we play it?
My education started before Moses Asch. I was working for Alan Lomax in the Library of Congress, and I listened to scratchy field recordings. But believe it or not, in Lower Manhattan once, I picked up a 12-inch, 78 RPM of B.F. Shelton. By gosh, his name just came back to me. Singing on one side, Pretty Polly, banjo accompaniment, and on the other side, Darling Corrie. I slowed it down to a growl. and it just called for an agile thumb and forefinger, and it's still one of my favorite songs.
Oh yes, my darling, I'll do the best I can, but I'll never give my pleasure to another gambling man. Time I seen darling Corrie, she was sitting by the banks of the sea, a 45 strapped around her waist, and a banjo on her knee.
Darling Corrie, sung by Pete Seeger, and thanks to Pete Seeger for talking to Mike Harding about making people's music. Moe Asch and Folkways Records, written by Dr. Peter Goldsmith, published by Smithsonian, and available over here from University Press Marketing.